Thank you for joining us for Couch and Court Issues. My name is Carla, and I'm a therapist. And here's Mark, my husband and family law attorney.
I'm glad to be here. This show is our way of serving others with our time and talent as a therapist and attorney.
We're both excited about being here and glad you've joined us for Couch and Court Issues, where we talk about real-life problems that impact the family. Today, we're going to discuss elder abuse. This topic was selected because it garners very little attention but afflicts millions of elders. Sadly, according to Focus on the Family, approximately 90% of the abusers are family members. As a result of this show, listeners will gain an insight awareness of the faces of elder abuse. Together as a community, we can offer support for seniors in need and their family members who care for them.
Carla, this morning I received a news release from the National Notary Association that a bill introduced in the California Assembly this month would require notary publics to report financial abuse of older signers if signed into law. This is the latest ongoing efforts by California lawmakers to prevent elder abuse and fraud. California Assembly Bill 477 would mandate California notaries who reasonably suspect financial abuse of an elderly or dependent adult during a notarization to notify local law enforcement or adult protective services within 2 working days. It's such a blessing that God has put Couch and Court Issues out front with hot topic issues that affect our families.
I was so excited when Mark shared that with me this morning. We were on our way to the station when I heard that, and it felt so confirming that God just gave us a confirmation regarding our show. How timely. With that being said, could you please provide a working definition of elder abuse?
Carla, elder abuse is the neglect, exploitation, painful or harmful mistreatment of anyone who is 65 years of age or older. Elder abuse tends to take many different forms. Some involve intimidation or threats against the elderly. Some involve neglect, and others involve financial exploitation. Elder abuse is so prevalent that I'm going to briefly explain the different types of abuse. Let me begin with physical abuse, which is the non-accidental use of force against an elderly person that results in physical pain, injury, or impairment. Let me give some examples of physical abuse here. It could be an unexplained sign of an injury such as bruises, welts, or scars, broken bones, sprains, or dislocations, report of a drug overdose, or apparent failure to take medication regularly. It could be broken eyeglasses or frames, signs of being restrained, or it could be a caregiver's refusal to allow you to see the older adult.
Mark, you mentioned the refusal to allow a person to see their elder alone. This could also be a warning sign that emotional abuse has occurred, as it prevents the elderly person from feeling free to share and express themselves. That being said, could you please provide a working definition of emotional abuse as it applies to senior citizens?
Emotional abuse is when the abuser uses verbal intimidation through yelling, threats, humiliation, and ridicule. Nonverbal psychological elder abuse happens when the abuser ignores the elderly person or isolates the elderly person from friends or activities. Let me give you some examples. It could be hesitation to talk openly, fear, withdrawal, or depression, hysteria, obsessive or compulsive thoughts, behaviors, or phobias. Carla, could you share your thoughts about neglect?
Yes, neglect or abandonment by caregivers happens when the caregiver fails to fulfill a caretaking obligation. Some examples of neglect: unusual weight loss, malnutrition, dehydration, untreated physical problems such as bed sores, unsanitary living conditions, dirt, bugs, soiled linen and clothes, being left dirty or unbathed. The last type of abuse, which Mark will address, greatly impacts the elderly, and that is financial abuse.
Carla, financial elder abuse involves the unauthorized use of an elderly person's funds or property, either by a caregiver or an outside scam artist. An unscrupulous caregiver might misuse an elder person's checks, credit cards, or accounts, steal cash, household property, or could be forging the elder's signature or engage in identity theft. Let me give some examples of financial elder abuse. It could be the significant withdrawal from the elder's account. It could be sudden changes in the elder's financial condition, items or cash missing from the senior's household, suspicious changes in wills, trusts, power of attorney, titles, and policies, addition of names to the elder's signature card, unpaid bills or lack of medical care, although the elder has enough money to pay for them. Or it could be financial activity the senior couldn't have done, such as an ATM withdrawal when the account holder is bedridden. Carla, what should a person do if they are being abused or suspect that someone is being abused?
You know, Mark, just listening to all these definitions, you can see how diverse abuse is and how broad it can be when it comes to elder abuse. That's why we felt it was so important to go over all these definitions. Sometimes we see or hear of situations that do not feel good with our spirit, but we don't think it's significant enough to respond to. I just want to challenge everyone, all of us, to check it out in some way. If nothing else, talk about it, process it out so you can get a healthy perspective, and then you can decide on the next steps. If elder abuse or exploitation is taking place in a private home, call Adult Protective Services or your local law enforcement agency. It's the responsibility of Adult Protective Services to investigate elder abuse cases, intervene, and offer services and advice. If you're concerned and do not feel the person is in danger, you could possibly reach out by being a listening ear to either or both parties involved. Ask the caretaker how you may be a supportive person and assist, if possible, in meeting some basic needs they may have. We can also assist in providing information regarding resources. Calling ahead to get the details so that the caretaker does not have to get burdened down with the runaround, which may initially occur when connecting with agencies.
If the abuse is occurring in a licensed long-term facility, such as a nursing home, speak directly to the manager. Share your concerns. Provide details. Offer suggestions. In doing so, the situation may be quickly resolved. If unsuccessful, call the local long-term care ombudsman.
Keep it in mind, due to limited physical, mental, or emotional capacity, many seniors do not have a voice to speak up and share their concerns. Seniors may not report abuse even if they are capable due to fear of retaliation from the abusers, while others believe that if they turn in their abusers, no one else will take care of them. Many times, the caregivers are their children, and the seniors may feel ashamed or embarrassed that their own children are abusing them. Seniors often blame themselves for being abused, feeling they deserve it. Mark, let's talk about the risk factors of caregivers.
You know, many non-professional caregivers, spouses, adult children, relatives, and friends find taking care of an elder to be satisfying and enriching. However, the stress of elder care can lead to mental and physical health problems, resulting in caregivers' burnout. Caregivers may become impatient, losing control, and lashing out against elders in their care. Among caregivers, significant risk factors for elder abuse are: it could be the inability to cope with stress, depression, which is common among caregivers, lack of support from the potential caregivers, or substance abuse.
Some years ago, I attended a seminar which shared information regarding the caregivers' health decline, both mental and physically, as they added to their already busy lives the addition of caring for loved ones. If I remember correctly, the presenter shared distinctions between the healthy group of caretakers versus the caretakers who was experiencing declining health problems. Many of these individuals who were having health problems shared some same risk factors, such as inability to cope with stress, depression, and lack of support from other potential caregivers. Many of them expressed feelings of guilt in allowing others to do what they felt is their responsibility and duty to provide.
Carla, let me do this. Let me provide a face on elder abuse. Hollywood actor Mickey Rooney was a victim of elder abuse, and he said he suffered in silence. He said, if elder abuse happened to me, Mickey Rooney, it could happen to anyone. Rooney said, for years I suffered silently, unable to muster the courage to seek help that I knew I needed. Even when I tried to speak up, I was silenced. It seemed like no one believed me, but I never gave up. Mr. Rooney filed an elder abuse claim against his stepson and his stepdaughter, charging them with verbal, emotional, and financial abuse. Mr. Rooney also claimed that the family members denied him of such basic necessities as food and medicine. It was said that Mr. Rooney was so afraid that when his stepson visited his home, he would hide from him. Mr. Rooney eventually won a court order handing control of his affairs to someone else, and he obtained a restraining order against his stepson.
That was so sad to hear about. I remember seeing his service announcement on television. Mickey Rooney was he had resources, a very brave man, and he was very high functioning. That did not prevent him from being abused. Yet, he was empowered and capable of being heard, resulting in being victorious in the end. Many elders are not as fortunate. Mark, who is required to report elder abuse?
No, a person who is responsible with or without pay for the taking care of an elder or dependent adult must report suspected elder abuse. Mandated reporters include healthcare providers, police officers, clergy, and therapists.
Also, financial institutions such as banks and credit union employees have a responsibility to report suspected financial elder abuse. If a mandated reporter fails to report known suspected abuse, he or she could face criminal charges. You know, now, as of this announcement Mark made today, notaries are now added to that list, which I think is a great resource. It's just keeping more open eyes available to seek out when people are being abused, because it's such a silent abusive system that goes on when it comes to the elderly. If you're worried about an aging parent or elderly loved one who lives in another community, you can contact the local law enforcement agencies and request a welfare check. I'm just so thankful for the government and private agencies and nonprofit agencies for these services. Before we go to break, I want to share one more thing. We can teach kids at an early age to honor and respect our elders. When our boys were young, we encouraged them to hold the door open for adults who were entering and exiting buildings. Mark often told them, put a handle on it, meaning when addressing an elder before they say their name, address it with something in front of it. Mr., Miss, Coach, Teacher. You know, I suggest you yourself can ask the elder or ask your child, what would you like us to call you? And how would you like to be addressed? This further encourages respect, and it reminds the youth to show respect in words and in actions. Thank you for listening to Couch and Court Issues. If you have just joined in, we have been talking about elder abuse, caring for aged loved ones, and what we can do as a community. My name is Carla Ambrose, and I'm a therapist, and I'm here with my husband, Mark, who is a family law attorney. Couch and Court Issues arose from our desire to talk about topics that impacts families from a therapist and legal perspective. Mark, what's the difference between domestic violence and elder abuse?
Domestic violence and elder abuse are not the same. Different laws apply to each of them. Unlike elder abuse, domestic violence normally involves a marital or dating relationship or former relationship with the abuser. If the victim of domestic violence is 65 years of age or older, the matter may also be treated as a case of elder abuse.
What can a person do to protect themselves from an abusive caretaker or spouse?
If you're in immediate danger, call 911. When the police arrive, explain what happened. In both elder abuse and domestic violence cases, the officers can contact an on-call judicial officer and issue an immediate emergency protective order. This legally prohibits the abuser from coming near you or contacting you. The emergency protective order will remain in effect for 5 court days or 7 calendar days. Then to extend the order, you have to seek a temporary restraining order. The temporary restraining order will go into effect as soon as it has been signed by a judge and delivered to the abuser. The temporary restraining order can be made permanent, which means that it will be good for up to 5 years, and it can be renewed.
Mark, I'm glad that the legal system have a setup for all this. But as I'm listening to this, it feels overwhelming. If you're a senior listening, this may sound overwhelming and even scary to you. I just want you to know that if you are in immediate danger, call 911. Your safety comes first. Adult Protective Services and other senior advocacy groups can be of service to ensure that you receive the assistance and service that you need to be safe. Preventing elder abuse begins with education. To be treated with dignity and respect is a basic human right. Families where slapping and hitting are considered acceptable forms of expression must be taught that yelling, pinching, punching, and shoving are never acceptable. Neither is withholding food or medication. Senility is not a license for caregivers to ignore an elder person's need. Listening when people express their pain, needs, and feelings is an act of respect, which all people are entitled to. Mark, can you share other suggestions that we have on what caregivers can do to avoid becoming someone who abuses others?
You know, if you're overwhelmed by the demands of caring for an elder, do the following. Request help from friends, relatives, or local respite care agencies so you can take a break, if only for a couple of hours. Find an adult daycare program for the elder. If there is a history of domestic violence in the family of an elderly person, caregivers should seek counseling to deal with the underlying emotional issues. If you have problems with drugs, alcohol, or any other addiction, get help. Contact your health provider or attend self-help meetings which are free of charge. Many of these meetings are located in churches. Celebrate Recovery is a Christian-based self-help program offered at many churches.
Oh, since elder abuse happens most often with the elderly are isolated, steps should be taken to increase the social contact for both caregivers and elders. No one person should be left alone to deal with an elder's needs. Families should come together to seek loving, practical solutions for caring for an elderly parent. If the demands of caregiving in a home setting becomes too demanding emotionally and physically, families should consider moving their elder into a safer setting within a licensed long-term care facility. If you are a concerned friend or family member, watch for warning signs that might indicate elder abuse. Take a look at elder's medication. Does the amount on the vial match with the date on the prescription? Watch for possible financial elder abuse. Ask the elder if you may scan bank accounts and credit card statements for unauthorized transactions. Call and visit as often as you can. Offer to stay with the elder so the caregiver can have a break. Mark, I shared earlier that we can start when our kids are young by teaching them ways to show respect for the elderly. The Bible provides countless examples of how elders should be respected and treated. Can you talk about promoting elder respect?
The best way to prevent our elders from being mistreated is to view them as valuable individuals and worthy of honor and respect. An elder's body does not reflect the character of their spirit. Gray hair, stiff joints, and a fading memory do not signal the loss of worth or humanity. Remember, the golden rule applies to the elderly. Are you treating your aging loved ones as you would want to be treated?
The topic of elder abuse really has sat in my heart. The magnitude of the problem and the silence among not only those who are abused, but the public has been intense. However, I am encouraged to know that